What I think is kind of odd is if you go back through my channel, you know, I've been doing these videos for like a long time. And I've been doing them consistently for a while now. And there are certain periods of my life that are documented, well documented on here, that I say totally contradicting things about myself, about how I feel, or about like experiences that I've had that like the broad story will be the same, but I'll change like little details about it or how those details are interpreted, because I'm in the process of interpreting them differently, first of all. But also because I'm in so much of an emotional state, or a lack of an emotional state, an apathetic one, that it'll lead me to say things that I don't really mean. Like, when I made that video, letting the cat out of the bag, for instance, it wasn't so much that the emotional numbness that I described in the video wasn't there, because a lot of the times it is. The problem with that video is that I describe it like it's simply a fact of reality. Like it's not possible to be more emotional, or that somehow it's not good to be more emotional. That I kind of reveled in this almost psychopathic mindset that I was projecting. And I've had somewhat psychopathic behaviors in the past, to outright antisocial behaviors in the past, you know, really bad things. I've done some really bad things. I've came close to doing some horrendous things, but I stopped myself. But those products of the circumstances that I was in, of the confusion, of the near mistakes that I made, to the mistakes that I made, the things that brought those things about were not necessarily hardened facts of life. They weren't things that came about just out of the ether, that I was just this way. They resulted from conditions, and those conditions can be changed. The desire can be changed. As long as you want to be good, that's enough. As long as you hold the genuine desire in your head that you want to be good, not necessarily that you want to have a good image, because I only care about my image insofar as it inspires other people. Like I wanna look cool and be cool if doing so will result in more good things occurring. And I like feeling proud of myself. I like feeling proud of who I am and what I've done, but like, if it's not doing anything, if it's not in service of anything, then eventually it starts to lose its grip. It stops feeling as important as it once did. So I like being good only insofar as it does something. That the act of being good improves other people's lives, not so much improves my own social standing or my own image, because I actively ruin my image with almost every video I make. I don't take myself seriously. I say retarded shit on the internet all the time. I say retarded shit to friends all the time. I don't care. And yet, I want to inspire people. And I want to be good. I want to be a good guy. Not because being a good guy is just inherently virtuous or looks inherently good, but because the act of being good feels good. That it's an ideal, a desire to strive for, not for the external factors surrounding it, but because of the internal factors that compartmentalize it. That's the important factor. That's the reason why I can continually sit here and say, I denounce those actions that I took in the past. Or I can sit here and tell you, yeah, I was a pretty bad guy. I have been a pretty bad guy. And maybe that makes me look terrible. In fact, to a lot of people, even people who I would consider some of my best friends, it has forever shaped their image of me. That I do look more terrible in their eyes. And perhaps those things are irrecoverable. I still talk to them anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But the image isn't what satisfies me. It's not the thing that you strive for, because I've been in places in my life where I strived for the image, where I wanted to look as good as possible. And that's not satisfying, because it's not real. Like, if you're just trying to look cool or to look good in a, you know, what's a synonym for inauthentic? It's the one that means something slightly different. Flagrant? No. What is it? What's the word? See, this is the problem with memory problems, is that it breaks the flow of your sentences because you're trying to find a more specific word to describe the difference. Whatever. Inauthentic, commodified, whatever you want to say. I don't even remember why I was looking for that word. What idea it was in service to, I don't remember. This is fun. This is very fun to not remember things. But... oh, essentially... what was the point? Oh yeah, inconsistencies. So I've changed sort of like my view of myself a lot over time. A lot in videos. Even in like the span of the same month, I'll talk about the same event in different ways. Or like, I'll talk about myself in fundamentally different ways. And so, I don't want to say that everything I've said shouldn't be taken seriously, because it's not that way. Like, you can find consistencies throughout my content and throughout what I say that are there. It's just that you have to take the things that I say with a grain of salt at a certain point. Because if you go back through the backlog, you're gonna find more and more shit that just sounds batshit insane, that doesn't align with other stuff that I've said. Because emotions and people are so nuanced and complicated that you can end up diagnosing a problem with symptoms that were as a result of something completely different that had nothing to do with the thing that you've now diagnosed, you know. And I don't mean that in the medical sense, I mean that in the colloquial sense of, like, finding problems. And so, it's a matter of being able to try and understand nuance and context. And I've pretty much given up on being understood at this point, just because I think it's kind of a futile effort. I know most people aren't gonna try. I appreciate the people who do, but I don't need their validation. I don't need to look cool. The only sense of validation that I need is either myself or to see that my work has positively impacted people. That's what I want, is that I want positive influence, positive impact. To know that I've actually done something good to help people. And you can say that that's inauthentic or that I'm like a bad guy or whatever for wanting that, but I don't care. Because I'm gonna do it anyway. But what matters, it's not what people think. It's not what people feel. It's about what you do. This is the fundamental thing that I feel like people don't understand. It's about your actions. It's not about how you feel. In fact, one might say that the fact that you are acting in better faith, that you are doing good things in spite of feeling, you know, really apathetic or feeling like dangerous, the fact that you're doing good things in spite of those things should be awarded. Because you're choosing to be good, even though you have these animalistic forces inside of you telling you to do the opposite. Like, everyone has evil in them on some level. It's just the degree to which we indulge in it. Like, or the degree to which our environment brings it out. And I would like to believe that most people also have good in them. It's just that you have to bring that out too. And I was thinking about this quote. I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something like, you know, every injustice you see, try to feel as much as possible. that if you see injustices in the world, you should be deliberately trying to feel something as a result of having seen them. Now, I've heard this quote before, several times, but with my life as it is now, sort of recontextualizing the quote after having re-seen it after a while, it really struck me, because when you see bad things happening, if you have the correct theory, correct praxis, the correct moral views, then you should be feeling as much as you can when you see incorrect behavior taking place. Like, the fact that you're seeing something bad happening that's morally unfavorable, and you know it's possible to feel something when you see it, or you know that it is an injustice, that should be a prerequisite to feel something. Even if you can't, bring it out of yourself. Because it's like I said in my video, anger is the backbone of change. If you can make yourself feel something, you can use that feeling as a motivation to move forward. And it's good to have that continual reminder. Even if you are just a totally stoic monk who just lives out your ideals regardless of how you feel, it's good to have that reinforcement. It's good to have that reinforced justification in your head that I will do the correct things, I will correct injustice in the world, because no one else will. That, you know, that because I saw it, I must feel something. I think I could describe this idea better if I wrote it, and I might actually write a video about this, about having a sense of duty and stuff. Because I've touched on it a lot in other videos. I've just always explained it in, like, weird, kind of roundabout ways, and I've done this forever. If you go back through my entire channel, I've been trying to explain this shit fucking forever, and I'm always coming to, like, different versions of how to explain it. So, I guess look forward to the eventual proper explanation of what I mean. It's kind of ironic that I read this entire book, by the way. It's kind of ironic that I have a messy room and I have an entire manga about cleaning it. Wait, no, I didn't read that entire book. It's not finished yet. It has a bookmark. It's the book under it that I finished. Okay. But, I have a manga about cleaning your room when I haven't cleaned my room. I think that's kind of silly. But yeah, if you see bad stuff happening, don't try to be apathetic and not do anything, because that's the that's the coward's option. The real tragedy in the world isn't the fact that there are evil people who do lots of terrible things. I mean, that's one of them. It's the people who have the ability to feel something, or have the ability to see what's going on is wrong, and then just don't do anything. It's like, if you can help one person in their life, and make their life slightly better, if you can keep them from dying, or if you can, you know, if you can cause them to have a better life in some way, improve their life, why would you not take the chance? Why would you not do it? Because ultimately, the fact that you did that improves your life in some way. And I've explained this in, I think it was the video I Love Systems, that I said ethical systems ultimately come back to benefit you more in the end, because everything that happens is connected in some way. Well, the fact that you might have saved a guy's life is going to benefit you in one way or another in the end. And I can sit there and I can apathetically decide I won't take those benefits, and I won't do anything, and I might not feel bad that the guy died. I might have suppressed all the emotions or just chose not to feel them. But that is the bigger tragedy. That is the bigger tragedy, because you have the ability to do something. You're just choosing not to. It's the people who have the ability to do something but don't that are the real problem here, I think. And I've been that problem a lot of times. I try not to be, and I've been trying not to be. It's been continually an ideal that I've strived for a long time. Regardless of however emotionally questionable I may be at certain points, regardless of however many strange things I've said when I'm bored or going insane, that central conceit, that one desire, has always come back. That if there's something you can do, you should do it. More so, the kind of depression where you're just constantly aching in pain and sorrow, and it feels like your entire existence, like your life is just black. Like you're in a black hole and there isn't a way to get out, that you can't see any light at all. Like your entire physical body, like it feels bad. Like it isn't just that your energy is gone, it feels like your entire body is sick, and you just feel like that every day. You know, you end up sleeping for hours and hours on end, and when you wake up, you don't feel like you slept at all. You know, and the entire feeling on a physical and mental level is just terrible. I was at one of those very, very low points where I sort of had those considerations, those types of thoughts on the regular. You know, it's always been really, really hard for me to sort of believe in myself and want to do things because I know I'll be able to achieve them. There's always that voice in the back of my head that says I won't, or if I do, it'll be really bad. And had someone else sort of tell me this kind of sentiment, someone I used to know, you know, just today, they told me, you'll never accomplish anything, Star. You've never accomplished anything in your entire life, and that and that your mood is just going to fluctuate again, and then you're gonna delete all the videos on your channel, or you're gonna, you know, do something stupid. You know, I mean, I can look at that and I can say, well, in these last few months, I've been way more consistent than I was before, and oh, I improved in all these little ways. But ultimately, no one's going to give a fuck about that. No one is going to be paying attention to the small steps that everyone makes as a child. I feel like maybe people don't see this. Maybe people forget about this. Maybe it's just the internet. I don't know what it is. I'm 17 years old. I was 16, 15 when I was told a lot of these other really bad things. You know, when I was 16 years old, on the brink of committing suicide, I was told that I was on the level of people who physically abuse their family members and try and shoot people. And I was told I was like one of those guys by one of my best friends. One of my best friends for 2 years. For virtually no reason. A lot of it was predicated on a misunderstanding of something else somebody else said, and I just sort of got caught in the crossfire of it, sort of casting judgment because of a personal matter between me and someone else, which really was no one else's business. But, you know, because I was in a dark place at the time, I said some things that I shouldn't have said. Nothing nearly as bad as that. I'm not trying to use whataboutism here, but they weren't really that bad things. And, you know, I ended up just getting this statement towards me that I was, you know, that I was like someone who physically abused people and tried to kill people and all this other stuff. And it didn't really feel good. You know, sort of everyone around me at the time was saying, Star is a monster, Star is insane, and all this other stuff. And it just sort of reinforced the idea in my head that I was. You know, when I was really little, I was told a lot that I was a boring kid and that I was a bad kid. And it made me so upset that I just didn't want to talk. Or if I did, I constantly felt guilty if I made a little bitty mistake, because it was pointed out by my family, oh, you're being boring again, or you're making this mistake in speech. And it would either fluctuate from physical hitting, or just yelling, or adamant complaining, criticism, these types of things. You know, when I was about 7, 8, 9, I was told many, many times that I was the reason why my parents were getting divorced. And I wasn't the reason, and my parents even say now that I wasn't the reason. But at the time, I'm not going to say who said it, but, you know, one of my parents told me that I was the reason why. And it made me feel so worthless at the time. Like I meant absolutely nothing. And I was always told that my artistic endeavors, don't do them. You're not good. You'll never get good. Don't do them. Learning languages, don't do them. You'll never get good. Eventually, a lot of my friends said this too. This was when I was online, but when I was at home, I was constantly told, this is worthless. Why do you want to learn a language? You're bad at it. Stop. And it's been something I've cared a lot about and wanted to do for a really long time. I would just end up feeling so guilty because I would remember what my family had told me, and then I'd feel like absolute shit because of it. And I would sort of try and sit there and think about, like, who am I? What am I to everyone around me? And I would only be able to bring up in my mind, oh, reason your parents are divorcing. Oh, boring child who deserves to be hit and berated, Not exactly a shining star of praise. And sort of when I talk to people online, it just kind of reinforced that, that I was shit, that I wasn't going to get better. Everything that I've achieved on here, even though some people believe I haven't achieved anything, everything I've achieved on here was in spite of all of that. It was me trying really, really hard just to stay alive. Do you realize how many times I've attempted suicide? How many times I've tried to end my own life? You realize that. I don't talk about this very much on the channel anymore, but I get, kind of hallucinate on the regular. The one thing that keeps that from being consistent is fucking CBD oil. This is the greatest soda in existence, right? I have cereals here. The greatest cereals in the world. See, now here, this is a fun thing to wake up to. The fridge has been entirely unplugged from the wall. I'm assuming repair guy, which, by the way, this happened as well, has a number to work on here. I've just been continually reading manga and desperately trying to get a hold of whatever internet source I can for the time being. Something I've observed about myself that's continued to be true, that's continued to show up again and again. I'm saying this right now at 12 a.m. 12 a.m. I tried to get to sleep at 8. Tried to get to sleep at 8 p.m. I've been attempting to get to sleep for about the last 4 hours in between checking Discord every now and again. I can't sleep. Yesterday I was tossing and turning in my bed. I didn't have any screens on because my head was hurting too much to look at the screen. I was tossing and turning again and again. My head felt like it was banging. Like my head had something banging against it. I felt like I was going to throw up. And I took my sleeping medicine and I felt better. I went to sleep. I don't want to take a bunch of those today because the more of them that I take, the more the effect wears off. So I go in basically periods of spending a few weeks not taking them, and then they end up being more effective then. They're never going to be as effective as they used to be. So when I started them out, it was like I would pass out, you know? But I took them at a pretty young age. So now they don't really work the same way anymore. And by young, I mean like a year ago. But it is what it is. It's been, you know, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've slept properly. I complain about this a lot. I talk all the time about, oh, I have a new sleep schedule every day, this type of thing. Well, last week it really was that. Last week I had woke up and slept at a completely, and I mean completely different time every day. I've always been like this. I've been talking about this on YouTube for as long as I can remember. For as long as I have been doing personal vlogs, not vlogs about video games, personal vlogs, in some form I have been talking about this. How I've never been able to sleep properly. It's always been present. I have tried everything to fix the problem. Nothing has fixed the problem. Everything. I mean everything. I sleep at a different time every day. Sometimes radically different. You know, I would sleep at, waking up at 1 a.m., right? I would wake up at 1 a.m. And then the day after, I'd wake up at 9 p.m. No rhyme or reason, it just was that way. I have these inconsistencies about myself, in my personality and the way that I act. I spend 2 months talking about the idea that I'm so emotionally cold and terrible, while in the previous month, having talked about how I love people. No, people are the answer. The two themes seem to be contradicting one another. And the thing is that I've never really been able to make sense of that. I've never really been able to make sense of, on the one hand, having these misanthropic and cynical feelings, having emotional numbness, and then also having not emotional numbness, having emotionality. I've never been able to understand those two states of being. I value the continuity of self so much that I will either choose one or the other extreme. And I end up going back and forth between which story of myself I'm going to tell. And there are certainly true elements of all of them. But to what end? To what end are they me? How do I know? How do I know which one is myself? Which understanding, which identity, which way of being, which story I've crafted, or which lineage of information that I've put together to be able to make a story out of. Oh, people have told me a lot of times that I value that too much. That I value having explanations for why things happen. But really, what else am I going to look for? If not why something happens, then what? What am I going to spend my time thinking about? If I don't understand why I am this way, and why I do the things that I do, then I would just go insane. Because I wouldn't know why. I wouldn't have any reason why. I would just be acting out my life doing things. Like, the idea of doing that and not understanding why is insane to me. I just want to know why. I just want to know why it's happening. And as a result of trying to cycle through the different reasons that I might be this way, or the different stories that I may tell myself as to who I am, it just looks very inconsistent. Because I don't fucking know. You think I know any of this? You think I know about my own emotional state? You think I know who I am? That I know how to compartmentalize my own feelings and experiences? I don't. I largely don't. I've said a lot of correct things about my own mental state, about how I experience emotions and who I am. I've said a lot of correct things about that. A lot of things that I can materially prove by showing actions and comparing them to the consistent feelings that I've always had. But there are certain statements that I just can't justify, certain statements that just don't make any sense, or statements that may have some backing if you look at them from the right angle, but given the new information and the newer things that I may have done in the last 2 years, turn out to not make so much sense. I don't understand it. I don't understand who Star is. And I've asked this to people so many times. And they've tried to explain to me who I am, their perception of me, based on the commonalities that they've continually noticed. And I appreciate it when people try to tell me those things. They try to reassure me of those things. But it often just ends up falling on deaf ears because I wake up and I look around and I remember that who I said I was 1 month ago is not the same as who I'm saying that I am now. I do pride myself on the fact that I'm a different person every day, that I'm a different person every couple of months. That constant progression and change is something that I like about myself. But for all of that uniqueness that comes out of that, I have this continuous desire for continuity, to have oneself. And I think because of that desire to be continuous, I will look back at feelings I used to have, things I've done in the past, consistently, and identify with them to such an extent that I would say that's who I am now, when the experiences and feelings that I have now don't necessarily line up with that. Many of them do, but not all of them. It's as if I just want something to make myself, you know? Like I have to have all of these things that I can point to and I can say, that's me right there. That's me. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to be self-aware about these things. I'm only smart enough to know what I don't know. I'm only smart enough to be able to tell you I am inconsistent, emotionally, in terms of my identity, and to tell you that that's a problem. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm not self-aware to know if it's a problem or not. But I can tell you exactly what the problems are. Point blank. That is something that I've improved on. But otherwise, it feels like I'm just taking shots in the dark. Like, my main intelligence just comes from the fact that I can complain all day about what I'm not doing, instead of knowing what to do, because I don't know. You know, I need to take a drink of water. I have to talk fairly quiet because everyone else in the house is trying to sleep. So I have to talk under my breath to keep from waking people up. The walls are so thin in this house that when I was doing a live stream yesterday, I guess now, because it is 12 a.m., I haven't gone to sleep yet, so it's no difference to me. I was doing a live stream, the 5-hour one that I did not too long ago. It was the last video on the channel. I had talked loud enough that my parents in the other room could hear what I was saying. They knew that I was doing a live stream. I wasn't even talking that loud, it was just that the walls were so thin that I could be heard. And I've known this is a problem for a while in this house. That if I'm talking, I'm usually heard. People can usually hear me. I tend to be pretty careful about it. Is that I don't like just shouting when I know everyone else can hear it. You know, in the early parts of the morning when people are gone, or in the early parts of the morning when people are sound asleep, it's a bit easier. But to do so at a time like right now, when everyone's just getting to sleep, it's like death, you know? It's the one thing you don't do. I'm not a smart guy. It's the more things that I learn, the more things that I know that I haven't learned. I get very abrasive about the things that I do know. Very, very abrasive. It's part of my personality. It's part of the act. It's part of the joke. Is that I think it's funny. I think it's really funny to just tell people off in a kind of egomaniacal way almost. But I know at the core of that persona, at the core of who I am, that I really don't know shit. I have very, very isolated interests that I do know things about, that I could talk to you about for hours ad nauseum, because I really have worked that hard to know, to check all of the footnotes, to check all of the sources, to know what it is that I'm saying on those specific topics. Everything else, if you asked me about how other people should live their lives, or about how I should live my life, I would be like a deer in the headlights. I wouldn't be able to tell you, because I don't have the life experience. It's not just that I don't have the life experience, I don't have the abilities to even substantiate any kind of point about that, because I just don't know how to. I wouldn't know how to. And if I did, if I attempted to explain my own perspective, it would always be from a one-sided view. Me trying to explain where I'm coming from in a way that, what was I gonna say? I was going to say in a way that came from a bunch of different perspectives, because I looked at it and questioned all the different sides, but then I thought about it and I was like, wait, that's literally not the definition of a one-sided view. But it would basically just be coming from a perspective that's not full. But at the same time, like, if I'm not able to understand and assess these things, then who is? Am I just on my own in the world? Well, maybe I am. Maybe I'm the only one who can solve these problems. You know, people say, I get help from a therapist, right? My therapist helps me, but I'm the one who has to make the change in my life. Maybe I just have to be my own agent of understanding. Maybe when I get older it'll be easier. I become jaded and cynical enough to just accept one idea of myself and then I just go with that. Or maybe some kind of magical wisdom stuff happens that we're all told about. I don't know. But that's the thing. I can only tell you what I don't know. I seem to be completely unable to tell you what I do know, because there isn't very much of it that I do know. Not a goof, not a gaffe, not something I'm saying as a result of being depressed. It's just a fact. And, it's really hard to be that emotionally inconsistent, or to be that inconsistent about one's own identity. I've gotten better about it. I've definitely gotten better about it in the last 6 months, probably. Last 6 months I've been getting better about it. But it's been still a problem in my life. Not knowing who Star is, how to understand what Star is. And then, because of those general inconsistencies, kind of identifying with just off-the-wall, just wacky stuff. That's the thing, is that it's all wacky. Everything I say is just wacky. It's just so wacky. Like, you look at my entire channel, it's all just a clown world. It's all just me saying wacky stuff to wacky people, talking about wacky things. It shouldn't be taken seriously. You know, my Essentials playlist I really like, because I feel like those are the videos that really stand out, that have, you know, a sense of merit to them. And I want to make more videos like that. I want to write more. I really, really want to write more. Because when I write, it feels like I understand. When I'm sitting down at the chair and I'm writing all of my thoughts out, coherently, letting you know, letting the flood of information seep from the keyboard. Practically sitting down, understanding, compartmentalizing, reorganizing. That is the act of writing. It's not like going up on the camera and just shouting about something that I've been thinking about for a while and doing it all in one take. Writing has a great sense of art to it, that when you're done with it you feel like you understood the topic better after having wrote it than before you had begun writing it. So many things I've written, so many things that I've written that I solved a problem in my life just through writing. My These Four Walls video, after I wrote that, I didn't have the same problems with nostalgia anymore. The problem literally went away after I wrote that video. It was a cathartic piece that embodied the kind of the problem that I had at the time, that, you know, it opened up the case and then it shut the case for the case to no longer be opened. And when I made that new video, there are still 4 walls. The point of that video was to open and shut the case on love. To say that I am kind of an emotionally numb guy, I got some problems up there, but I still want to love someone at my core. That's still an ideal that I strive for. That it's something in my heart. And I convey this point through Going through like a long history and then having the emotional precipice be at the end, you know? I liked making that video a lot. I need to make more stuff like that. If all I'm gonna do is complain about how dumb or inconsistent that I am, then there's just no point to it at that point. If all I'm gonna do is wake up every day with the height of my day being the fact that I live streamed, that live streaming 6 hours is the peak of my day and nothing else compares to it, then I should be writing. There's always more ideas. There's always more things to explore. I should be writing. I shouldn't be doing stuff like this all the time. It's not good for my health. Not good for my well-being. Because I just recognize the flaws. And the flaws don't hurt the way that they used to. That's one thing that I've improved upon. But they're still there. And I continue to still recognize them. And, I don't know if this makes sense to anybody. To be honest, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But that's kind of the point. I'm a very conflicted guy. I believe philosophically a lot of things about people. I think people are good for you. I think you should help other people. I think that benefits you. And I feel good when I do those things. I like doing those things. But I'm never quite good at being close to other people. Most people, at least. Is that when I have to spend time with like coworkers, students, people who are in the same position as me, people who I have to consistently interact with, more often than not, I just don't want to, because I don't relate to them. I don't have the same interests, don't think the same way, and the way I talk and think kind of repulses a lot of people. It's okay, it's a matter of preference, but I feel the same way about people with normal interests, people who don't think the same way. Well, maybe not to that degree. There's tons of people I disagree with, but they're cool, because we have a lot of the same interests, or they have an interesting personality, an interesting story to tell. I think most people just don't have that. I tried to justify this by saying that people are inherently interesting, because everyone comes from different conditions. They all have their own stories. They all have their own things to say, because humans are complex and they have upbringings and all this other stuff. But that may be true for everybody, but usually the upbringings are pretty simple when you look at them. There's individual differences, but usually they're pretty simple. Guy gets hit by his father, becomes bad. Big shocker. These things aren't super deep or interesting. It's usually people like me, nerds and otakus, who tend to have the types of upbringings that I'm interested in. I'm more fascinated by a guy rattling off all of his favorite games and his entire history with video games as a kid than I am by listening to someone's entire life story who is completely normal and boring. I don't know how to reconcile this issue, because I do genuinely care about other people. I want to see other people doing well, and I want to have hope for them. I feel good when I know I'm doing something good for others. When I see that the world is hopeful, or that there's something good happening, that maybe I could inspire someone, when I have inspired people, at times it's even brought tears to my eyes. I don't think a guy like that just completely gives up on all humanity. And that's why it's so hard for me to understand, because I'll just leave. I just won't say anything. I'll just be gone. I won't want to interact. I'll ignore you on the streets, you know? Just because I'm bored. Just because I'm bored by most people. There's not an anxiety element to it. I'm not afraid. You know, there are select individuals or places to go, places to be that I am afraid of. I do feel a bit anxious when I go to. But by and large, me not wanting to talk to people is just because I don't want to. And when people ask me why, when they say why, I don't really know how to answer. I mean, it kind of is my job on this channel to explain things. But when it comes to this, I've been told so many times that it's wrong or that I'm messed up or that I don't know what I'm saying or that I'm delusional that I really don't know what other way to frame it. I've made countless videos trying to frame it where I either go too extreme in one direction or the other and I don't really know what the thought process is because I'm completely conflicted. I feel one way philosophically and then pragmatically I feel a different way. What do you make out of that? What do you make out of the emotions not necessarily always lining up with your actions? How do you figure that out? My commenters certainly haven't had consistent definitions. I get people writing up big paragraphs and that always helps. But then I see people writing these two-word comments that just say, oh, you're bad. Well, why? Why am I bad? What have I done? What am I doing that's incorrect? Could you explain to me what I'm doing wrong? I really don't know. When you have this much time to think and reflect and all of these things, and you're doing so, melting through the pot on a channel, you really do see all of the little bits and pieces of the thought process, the way other people wouldn't. You know, most other people, they wouldn't go to this degree. They wouldn't always be thinking about this. But I don't know what else to do. I really don't. Like, I've just always been like this, reflecting, brooding, introspecting on these things. Whenever something happens, I think about what happened. If that's a justification for being the way that I am, I guess that's what it is. But how can you analytically determine that? What evidence do you have to give to those claims? Do you ever spend so much time in one place that you kind of wish that you had an alternative to it, or at least could modify it in a certain way to make it to where you didn't have to experience things in the same way? For me, this is the internet. I use the internet all the time. There's certain things you just do that you do them so often that every now and again you want an escape. You want to return to something from the past, do something a different way. I use the internet constantly, and I see people doing these internet challenges surrounding these ideas that they say, I'm going to challenge myself to not use this specific website for 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, maybe the entirety of the internet. Maybe I'm not going to drive for a month. I walk everywhere. These types of things. People make these little challenges to change up their routine, to make their life feel like it's more interesting, that they have more things going on, or to just experience something that's different, to break the monotony of it all. And, I use the internet constantly. It's my main source of entertainment, primarily speaking. And I've sort of considered this idea of blocking myself entirely from the internet as a whole. But the more that I've thought about it, I've thought, okay, well, I'm not going to have the self-control to not just turn the internet back on, because it's right there. And what's the point of restricting myself from using those features when artificial restriction is not the same as real restriction? When you think of an artist, for instance, they make something really innovative and interesting because they didn't have the proper tools to do what they wanted in their mind. People remember them for the innovative things because those things ended up coming about out of conditions, out of necessity. And so, because they had to evolve and change in order to make what they had work, their original idea kind of becomes sidelined in a way. Their original vision can't fully be enacted because now they have to make this new vision out of what they have. And because they had to get creative to express themselves in what they believed to be the best way they could with what they had, those people become remembered for working with what they had. They become, remembered for being able to astonish everyone with the feat of making something out of what could be perceived as nothing. And those people are remembered, or at least do something that's good and interesting, because they didn't have all of the tools right in front of them. They couldn't make the clearest vision of what they wanted to. And I'm really fascinated by this idea of, like, things that... What was I going to say? I have absolutely zero idea how long this battery is going to stay afloat, because right now my phone is at 4%, and I did not at all expect for the power to short at this point. So if randomly the video cuts out and I upload it anyway, that was why. It's interesting. I've had a fun history with power outages. Power outages have been a very real reality for me ever since I was, like, very little. Like, one of my earliest memories, from what I can gather, was, in fact, power outage. I was about 3 years old at the time, and I had been cuddled up with a pillow on my mom's bed at the time, and I remember walking through the hallway. There were a couple lights there. I had, like, a little bitty light that I used that I had just found, kind of scavenging around my room. And I go into the kitchen at the time, and I take out, I think it was some kind of, like, cheese product. Like, I don't think they make them anymore, but it was like a cheese snack, essentially. I take that out, and I go back onto the bed, and then, of course, the reaction I receive is, wait, why did you open the fridge? Because there's no power. You need to keep the cold in the fridge in order to keep the food from going stale. I didn't know that at the time because I was very little. But I just kind of laid on the bed listening to the rain fall outside, listening to the thunder go. And as I got older, that became one of my favorite habits. I genuinely liked the idea of the rain making the power go out, because you had 3 hours, sometimes 5, sometimes an entire day where you end up going to sleep and the power's not even on when you wake up the next morning. You'd have a few hours of completely unfettered time, no television to make a bunch of noise in the background of the house, because our walls were quite thin at the time. You could hear most things coming through them. Or if you get into the later period of that part of my life, I didn't have a door, so it was especially like, okay, TV's too loud. But, don't have any TV to bother you. You just kind of can chill and listen to the sound of the rain, the very melodic sounds of the rain. I think a way to express this desire has been shown through compilations of rain on YouTube, for instance. You get these 10-hour relaxing compilations of nature sounds, because there's something that just kind of speaks to the human heart about just laying back and enjoying the sounds of nature, just allowing your mind to be completely at peace and not really having a lot of protruding thoughts going through it. You're just kind of living in motion and allowing each thought to filter themselves in and out of your mind as you simply partake in the bliss of listening to the rainfall or these other natural sounds. It's always nice. It's always a really nice feeling. And it's the type of relaxation that we don't normally put ourselves into. We live in a world where we're just surrounded by media constantly, so if I want to turn on the computer and check Discord, or just turn on my damn phone and check Discord, which is always going to be in your pocket, a mini computer always right there, a mode of contact to the outside world, and a mode of understanding of any number of concepts, you can just pull it out of your pocket. How much time that's going to be able to take up is only going to be shown through, your willingness to quit. But if you don't have that willingness, you're going to rack up a shit ton of time on that device, on any device. we're always connected. There's nothing that you can do to perturb that connection, to move it somewhere else, because you're just always going to be using things on the internet for, your job, social life, just to be entertained. And it's so easy. The barrier to entry is so low when it comes to connecting to the World Wide Web, and thus connecting your entire life to that World Wide Web, that why would you not do it? Because doing anything else is going to be exponentially harder. That's how they've commodified it, and to such an extent that it just becomes the ultimate convenience. You can just do it at any time. It doesn't take any effort. And because it takes the least effort out of all of them while providing a semblance of pleasure, at least a little bit of one, enough of a dopamine rush to keep you there at the very least, it creates a system in which you feel compelled to continue going back and going back and going back, because nothing else makes more sense, because it's right there and it's easy and it gives you some kind of rush, so you just keep doing it. And I like disconnecting from all that. I like laying down in my bed. I like it when the rain, and I know I've said this many times, I like it when the rain starts. One thing I haven't mentioned is that I like it when the rain takes the power off. And so I can just lay back, and maybe I'll get a reading light out and I'll read a book, or I'll just lay back and either take in the sounds of the weather or take in no sound at all. When it's completely dark in my room and I can just lay down, it gives me some kind of energy, some kind of juice. It makes me feel like my thought process is just one with itself. It's just at peace. There's no conflicting information running amok, It's just kind of there. It just kind of exists. I think that's really special. It says my phone is at 1% battery at this point, but essentially it's a nice getaway. It's a nice getaway to be disconnected from the internet, especially in the sense that once you come back, the thoughts that you had are going to be at least a little bit different from the thoughts that you have on that cocaine, dopamine rush of just viewing stuff on the internet the way that you would regularly do all the time. It's sort of like a spiritual journey, like somebody goes into the woods to find themselves or some kind of nonsense like that. Any breakup of a routine, it's comfy. It's a comfy feel. And I like this idea of voluntarily taking myself out of the internet, or involuntarily taking myself out, in which I literally have no choice and I just have to enjoy the better option. Look at these. These are beautiful, pretty keyboard keys that have light that shine out of them. They look nice. You know what else looks nice? This room. I actually really like this room a lot. This room is a cool place. It looks nice. It doesn't look nice enough. There's things that I want to do to advance the look and the overall feeling of the room. But there's one thing that I've noticed in particular that I feel like I've had a habit of doing in my videos when I look back at them, is that, like, I have all of these videos where I complain about aesthetics, and I talk about this idea that, somehow if I just magically change the way that my room looks, I'm gonna, feel different inside of it, and I don't think that, tracks logically with, how people generally do things. Typically, if you're bored, and if you feel that you're running out of things to do in your room, or just, a lack of motivation, a lack of dopamine, typically you would need to do things outside of your room to make up for the fact that you don't have that. To have labor that you're doing that you feel gives you some kind of purpose, or a firm schedule throughout the day of things that you feel satisfied doing, meeting people, seeing people, talking to them, generally things like this, having a consistent sleep schedule to not end up being tired all the time from sleeping at different times always. Um, Keeping yourself entertained but not ignoring reality. Always having things to do but never doing so many things that you're ignoring the underlying problem. These are all very proactive things. You're taking a self-aware approach to doing things that are meaningful to you, always doing things that bring you a sense of joy, or doing things that are fulfilling. But I've thought a lot about this idea of the visualized lifestyle, of the lifestyle that sort of embodies what it means through visual indicators. So for instance, I have this video called Organized Chaos, the Hikikomori's Room, and that video kind of overly romanticizes this idea of just trash your room up, fuck it up, have trash everywhere, and that's like organized chaos, bro. It's like dents and shit, bro. It's just like a mess, bro. Just have a messy room because messes are based and epic or something. And looking back, watching that video, I don't really get the logic behind it. And to be fair, I don't really get the logic behind having a clean room either. But it just seems weird to me that I would romanticize such a specific thing. And I started to think about it, and I linked it back to where a mess like that would originate from. Is that true? I still kind of like it as an aesthetic thing. It's not totally true. I feel like I'm making this video on a false premise. Welcome to yet another episode of Star inadvertently alienates his audience by having opinions that are nuanced and specific. Today I want to talk about this sort of dogmatism and almost cult-like behavior that exists in the trans community. And I know I'm going to get flack for talking about this because it's something that a lot of people just don't want to bring up, because as a group they're already, torn down enough, they're already oppressed enough, and it's unfair to sort of make a broad sweeping generalization when there's already enough broad sweeping generalizations made by this group of people that are just outright unfair and wrong. But I think if we're to have a truly, educated and free society, we should be able to talk about these things for the sake of argument, for the sake of furthering knowledge and ideas, to seek truth from facts and all that stuff. Is this video even worth making? I don't think it's worth making. Whatever, fuck it. I find something very comforting about always having the light off. See, even my windows, if you walk over to the one window that I have in this room, I don't just have to put a curtain over it. Well, I mean, that curtain was the one that came with it. I actually put an entire blanket over it because the light from the window was coming in too much, and I didn't like it. Of course, I put the old clothes wardrobe from the old house in front of it as well. I want to put a bookshelf in front of it, to be honest, just to alleviate the little bit of light that's coming in. I really don't like the sunlight, and this has been a problem that's only built up over the years as I've gotten older. When I was a kid, I didn't really like going outside that much, mostly because there was just nothing to do where I lived. We had a really big yard in comparison to many other people who probably watch these videos. They live in a suburb or something, or they live in an apartment, probably don't have a yard at all. We were fortunate enough to have a very big yard, quite a bit of land there, and then of course right beside of us we had my grandfather's farm, set apart by, quite a bit of trees and a big road and everything. But that's what I was growing up around, was virtually nothing to do. And I already couldn't go out and play for too long because of the heart condition that I had, so I wasn't really interested in going out very often. But I think over time, as my eyes got used to always being in the house, there was something about going out and seeing the light that I just didn't want to do. Like, as I continued being out there, it just felt kind of worse. Like, it felt like I was more tired the more that I had saw the light. And nowadays when I go outside, it doesn't bother me as overtly as it used to. But there is still this sense that it's an annoyance, that it's something that I don't want to see, that I don't want to be looking at, I really don't think I like the current cycle of sleep that I'm in, because I've been awake in the daytime. What a horrifying concept for Infinite Outlaw to be doing, I know. It's been really difficult for me to record vlogs because there's people obviously awake around in the house, and I've wanted to make things, but I can't make something if I'm trying to actively project my voice and I know it can potentially be heard, just because it feels weird. I don't want it to bother anything. And so it's been really difficult for me to make content, and if I'm not going to make content each day, like, I'm not going to sit here and say what is the point of doing anything, but it's so ingrained within my routine at this point, and within how I see things, how I want to do things, that it feels wrong to not be making a video each day. Because I've just been doing it for so long. It feels like something I should be doing, and beyond that, it's something I enjoy doing actively. And I really, really hate being awake in the daytime because of this. Because I can not be as loud as I want to at night. I can be significantly louder, and I won't have to worry about the idea of someone hearing me if I am. And so I really can't wait until my sleep schedule changes again, because I just don't want to be awake at this time, I really don't. And I think it ties into a more important factor. I really don't understand what people are trying to do when they're trying to, school me on capitalism and tell me that I'm wrong and that my belief system is wrong for all of these reasons that I heard when I was in school and that I've been told by the news media and by every single hack academic, or quote-unquote academic. I don't consider them academics from these, fucking nonsense places like the Austrian School of Economics. Like, oh, you gotta read Ludwig von Mises, you gotta read Ayn Rand because, wanting to strangle your wife to death is based and epic, and it's worshipping psychopaths is a great thing. Come on, the Ayn Rand, you gotta read Ayn Rand, man. You gotta read the Austrian School of Economics, man. Well, I've read all of these people who people typically tell me to read, and I've used other sources as well as things like, common sense and reason to
easily debunk all of the very obviously wrong claims that are being made. Like, all you have to do is just use common sense. Like, if you just use common sense and real world experience from, I don't know, being poor for the most of your life and being able to see other people being poor and, I don't know, dying from drug addiction, like people who my family knew have. Like, these very, like I haven't had a ton of life experience, but all I need to see is the data. You just see, oh, Guatemala, Haiti, you know, all of these countries that capitalism has just worked out great in. And then you see, your own life experiences tend to tend to suggest something counter to the narrative that people often give. And like, I don't know if these people just grew up middle class, if they haven't had a lot of struggles in their life, if they're just not particularly smart, and they assume that I'm also not smart, that I'm gonna somehow vibe with this like spiritual nonsense that they haven't took 5 seconds to question. I don't know what it is, but like it's really weird to me because it seems like people leave these comments like somehow, sometimes you'll get the based intellectual where they actually believe they're smart and they're saying capital is shit. But like then you have, people who just genuinely believe that I don't know anything about the point that they're about to make, and they're inane, asinine comment where like they're spitting out centuries worth of platitudes and ideas that can easily be debunked with like 2 Google searches. That somehow I'm just too stupid to understand any of these very basic talking points that you hear people commonly use. Like, I'm not trying to sound like a pretentious guy. I mean, on the one hand, I am kind of exaggerating my stance, but like, it makes me really angry at times. Where like, dude, or I mean, that's not a fair characterization. It used to make me angry, but these days I'm just like, dude, why? Why are you saying these things when it's very, very obvious that, I've probably encountered this opinion before? I used to like Discord calls a lot. It isn't to say that I don't like them now. I always have a lot of fun when I go in them. But it's rare that I actually do. I would say there's about four people I speak to on a regular basis. Really, there's just one of them. There's literally one guy who I speak to on a regular basis, and it's usually just because I have a lot of fun with him, and he asks to call me a lot, whereas most other people don't, except like, I don't know, when they're drunk or something. So it's pretty rare that I talk to people on calls, and it isn't like I tend to want to that often. I'm thinking back to mid 2017 to essentially the most of 2018. Now, in the summer of 2018, there were quite a few weeks in which I didn't do very many calls, and I literally just stayed in my room watching anime, relegated to basically no one but myself. And so the misanthropy was kind of setting in at that point. Misanthropy that had always been there to some extent. When I was a kid, I never really had much interest in speaking to other people. It was just when it was new and exciting, a brave new concept to me in 2017, that I really started grappling on with it. I made a vlog at the time called, in all capital letters, Calls, because I had this idea in my head at the time that I was just going to do calls forever, and I had wanted to do them all the time. Now, the context for this was that I had been in an 8-9 hour call at the time, and I still had energy after I went out of it. I cannot imagine doing a call like that now.
There's only been one call in recent memory that went anywhere close to that long, and by the end, I was tired as fuck. Like, I did not have energy by the end. And that's only because that one person who I talk to pretty frequently, I don't know, just brings the energy out of me. I don't really know how to describe it. Sometimes you have one friend or two friends who you've spoken to for a long enough time where certain things just gel with them, and even though you may not necessarily ask them to call very often, whenever they ask you, you feel really nice and happy because that one person, brings out these things in you that you don't necessarily always know how to describe. Where, like, when you're speaking to them, there's just enough that clicks that you relate to one another on that it becomes very easy to be friends with that person. But even then, like, I'll find myself, someone like that will phone me up or say, "Hey, do you wanna phone me up?" And I'll just say no at certain times. There's many days I go without really speaking to anyone, and not in real life, not on the phone, because the energy just isn't there. It's not that I'm unhappy. It's not that, I feel the need to be away from everyone. It's just not the subject of interest the way that it was, however many years ago, where I was so excited about it. It was such a new concept to me that I just wanted to do it all the time. And in a way, I kind of despise the person who I became when I did this, because I wanted to be alone so little that it literally did not make sense to me to spend time by myself anymore. I just had energy all the time to be speaking to people. I was keeping up with everyone's drama, everyone's gossip. I was in on all of it. I wanted to be such an active character in that group that I would take so much charge, in the sense that I would try to be the subject of interest. I would try to be the one that everyone was paying attention to. I did this all the time. And I cannot imagine myself having as much energy as I would need to do that now. Like, when I look back at the person who was doing those things, it almost feels like I'm looking at a totally different guy on every single level. Like, the emotions that I had to feel at the time just feel like something that I don't get anymore. And today, I went in literally 2 calls, in both of which I didn't say very much compared to how much I used to say. And this is, again, something that I've noticed over time. I've begun saying less and less. Each call that I've gone into for the last, 6 months. I went in 2 calls today, and I was like, wow, that was a lot of talking. 2 calls for 1 or so hours each. Wow, that was a lot. Can't believe I talked for that long today. And this is off the back of not speaking very often for, days and days on end, not doing it at all, just not feeling the need to, not wanting to. And it's very weird to me that I can just go from 2 years ago being this highly excitable person. Oh, I need to be with people. Well, there's no reason to be alone. I need to be with people all the time. To this guy who, even with my best of friends, I will turn them down every now and again because I just won't want to speak to anyone that day. Spending many, many days just in solitude, total solitude. It's strange to me that that's where I'm at now. When I spent, a year and a half, feeling the exact opposite. And part of what I think led me to doing that all the time was having more friends, first of all. A lot of those people I just don't talk to anymore. Don't have the energy to, or they don't want to speak to me, where I had more access to people and I felt the need to. The conditions that I was in made it to where I rarely had very much that I could do. I could watch YouTube, but that was basically it. I didn't have a lot of video games that I could readily play. I didn't read very much back then. I felt that those experiences were very, very new, and I was much more sad than I am now. Sad to the point where I had to be in calls just to not hear my own thoughts. That my own thoughts were so intrusive when I was alone that I needed to be around other people. Because when you're that sad, when you feel like you're in that much pain, the only way you can ignore it is just by spending time with people 24/7, because you're never focusing on the pain. I tried to do this strategy when my first real big terrible breakup had happened last year. And the strategy didn't really work. It helped, but it didn't take away the feeling, or it didn't distract me from it. And I think that was the moment where I really was just taken aback, and I stopped for a moment, and I thought, there really is no reason to be doing this all the time. It doesn't work. It doesn't work the way that it used to. No, I'm not pretending the pain isn't there anymore, because it's right front and center, even when I'm speaking to people. Maybe it was because I was using less of my brain energy to focus on the conversation, but it showed up there nonetheless. And that was when I stopped doing it as much as I used to. When I stopped going in calls for 6 hours a day, sometimes calling the same person twice, 3 times in a day, because I just couldn't anymore. I didn't see the need. There wasn't really one. And now that I feel, comparatively speaking, a lot less depressed than I used to be, it's really hard for me to talk to people. I feel like I did when I was 10 or 11 years old. 12, 13, 14, where I just had no interest. It was something that I wanted to do in a kind of abstract sense. I thought, well, it would be cool to have friends. What would that be like if someone accepted me for who I was? What would that be like if I knew someone who had the same interests? That type of thing. But it wasn't something that ached at my neck. It wasn't something that was so important that I had to think about all the time. I spent most of my time thinking about concepts, watching videos, making videos. Didn't matter to me. And when I was introduced to this concept of talking to people on calls, it kind of restructured my mind for a while, because it was just so exciting to talk to people. And when it stopped being exciting, I just reverted back to the person who I was, and only doing them every now and again these days. So I always had hiatuses where I just didn't talk for a while. I always had hiatuses, days where I wouldn't do it as much, but it was nothing in comparison to the way that I am now. Because for every one day that I spent not doing 5 calls, there was still 1 call being done. And for every day that happened, there were 6 other days in which I spent the entire day in those calls. Literally, I would just jump from person to person all the time. If someone got bored, if someone couldn't speak anymore, I went to another server. I went to speak to another person.
It's insane to me. It is insane to me that I spoke to that many people. What do I have, like 10, 15 people on my Discord list at this time? I don't even know if it's that much. And a lot of those people aren't even people I speak to. They're just on there. Like, there's only like 4 people who I talk to. And it's really weird to me because I spoke to everybody back then. Anybody who I could speak to, I spoke to. I spoke to everybody. Everybody. I had not just a normal relationship with them. I would try to be close with anybody who I came in contact with. I felt like I needed to be close with them. If they needed help with something, I would offer firsthand. In fact, it was one of the first things that I did. I would say, if you ever need help out with something, I'm here. You know, if you ever need something, if you, God forbid, if you ever need to vent, I'll listen. Like, I would just say these things all the time because I wanted the people attention. I wanted the love, the validation that you would get from something like that. And I don't feel that way anymore. You know, I feel exactly like I did, you know, for the first 12, 13, 14 fucking years of my life. And reflecting on that with the knowledge that I have now of how it is that I am, and thinking about just how extreme I had gone down the rabbit hole of speaking to people all the time, it's really weird to me. It's really, really weird because the contrast between those people is so large. You know, like, how do you just go from someone who has constant fucking energy all the time to constantly speak to people to being someone who just wants to play video games? You know? How does that happen? I don't have an explanation. But I guess I just reverted to my baseline self, the self that I had been for however long. And the solution, quote unquote, that I tried to use for sadness didn't really work over time. I think the thing with loneliness isn't that talking to more people is going to fix it. That's what I thought for some time, that if you just spoke to more people, it would be gone. And in some ways, it worked at first, but over time, it didn't. As the interactions became more shallow, and as I became more uninterested in the vast majority of people, because newsflash, people are fucking dumb, it just felt like there was no point. It felt like there was no reason. When, you know, I would be sitting at the lunch table in middle school, and there would be all these people there, and I would speak to them a little bit. Wasn't friends with them, but they didn't abhor my existence so much that they just didn't want me there. I would say a few words. Maybe even I would jump out of my skin a little bit, start getting loud, and I never felt like I was with other people. I felt totally alone, like I was putting on an act and just doing things because I was supposed to be doing them. It didn't feel like I was there. It didn't feel like anyone else was there. It just felt like I was kind of living in this machine that was meant to be running all day, surrounded by other machines serving their own function. Didn't feel like we were human beings. It felt like I was just all alone, moving the gears around. And feelings like that were what I started to feel more and more as I forced myself into these conversations, just out of sheer loneliness or boredom or sadness, where I was speaking to people, but I felt more lonely than ever because I didn't want to be doing that, but I thought it was the only thing I really could do. The thing about loneliness is that it isn't about being alone. It's about doing things you enjoy. If you don't enjoy your company with someone, you're not going to like them. If you're not enjoying the time that you're spending, you're going to feel alone because you'll be sad. And that's the problem.
is that when you focus on tackling these these issues in such a surface level way, you really lose track of what the real point of all of it is. It's to make you happy. If what makes you happy is a solitary activity in which you take care of yourself, maybe you go out to eat by yourself, maybe you play a game that you really like, then that's going to be 10 times more fulfilling than talking to some random jagoff who is probably pretty stupid and probably doesn't have very many interesting things to say. Oh, that's how I felt 80% of the time after a certain point. And in the beginning, I didn't feel that way. I had this unending optimism where I was like, people are so great, and I love them, and yeah, they're stupid, but I can see why they're stupid. I can understand their upbringing, and, I just want to be peaceful and love them, and they need more love, more this and that. I need to talk to people all the time. It doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter how interesting they are. They're interesting because they exist. Really weird stuff. Now, I would speak to many of these people for hours and hours and hours every day just because they exist, therefore they're interesting. They have personal experiences, therefore they're interesting. They give me attention, therefore they are good and smart, I can understand why they're dumb, so I'll put up with it and I'll be optimistic and stuff. But as time went on, I stopped feeling that way, and I almost became a little bit of an elitist. I stopped that train of thought because I was like, look at all of these ants. That was the way I was thinking. I was like, look at all of these fucking people. They don't understand anything. They're boring. They spend their entire lives doing all this bullshit. I don't really think that way anymore. Maybe I'll make a joke about it or something, but I was just really getting frustrated after a certain point because I stopped feeling that way. And I noticed all of the flaws that I had been hyper fixated on when I was in school. Now, when I was in school, I looked up to someone like Light Yagami. I wanted to be Light Yagami. Now, I thought about the idea of Light putting, the people's names in the Death Note, and I had like an entire list of people I wanted to do that to. Not even just for the fact that that they did something to me. Sometimes it was just because I thought they were boring as people, or I thought they were stupid. And I thought the way that we fix the world is by getting rid of all of the stupid people and then have it be ruled by some intellectual elite. Really insane authoritarian ideas, but that's what I was thinking back then. And I would get just so angry at these people because I thought none of them were on my level. And I hated myself very, very deeply, but I wanted people to at least be at my level and better, And it was really stupid, the fact that I had reached arrogant levels that were that high. And I've seen myself slip into arrogance like that in the past when I've gotten more unhealthy and sad and angry. But nowadays I feel like I just have a neutral stance. I'm like, yeah, they're stupid, so I'm not going to speak to them. But their stupidity doesn't affect my existence. They shouldn't be removed for the fact that they're dumb. They just kind of exist. You can choose not to speak to people if you don't want to. And I guess it's that sort of elitism, I guess. I don't know if it's even elitism. It's that sort of feeling that these people, oh, fuck. I don't think I've ever found an image that more accurately represents what I was trying to get to in that Why Work video. Because that video was really rambly, and I didn't really explain the idea super well. Not as well as I could have, definitely. So this meme right here, it's like I believe I am capable of giving myself goals and am motivated enough to complete them, even if I don't have a boss man yelling at me. Like, that's the entire idea of being in need, is that, like, if you look at volunteer firefighters, if you look at people who mod video games all the time, you know, the hundreds upon hundreds of hours people put into that, internet archiving, or just archival in general, all of these are things that people care about that would seem like a huge amount of work, you know, that you could be putting in at a job, but people do that work because they care about the work that they're doing enough to do it. They don't need a boss to tell them to do it. They just do it because they care. People are capable of putting in massive, massive amounts of work into things that they care about. It's just that they have to care about them. If you look, it says, I believe labor is not inherently valuable. The only inherently valuable thing is my own enjoyment and fun. It's your life. You exist. Because you exist, you should be doing things that add to your happiness and make you happy in some way. You shouldn't, you know, be sitting around and thinking, oh, I should be doing something for everyone else because labor for the society I live in is good or something. No. Like, if you want to do it and you enjoy it, you should be doing it, because ultimately you're only going to be living here for so long. Shouldn't have to be focusing on what it is that everyone else wants. I believe wage slaves are bitter about having to work, but I will do my best to remind them there is another way. Again, like, people, you know, I think it's always the right thing to do, to remind people that you don't have to live that way. You know, you don't have to live in a way that's negatively affecting your mental state. Look at the amount of workplace suicides that happen. More and more people are dying as a direct result of work, of working a job that they hate for so long that they just get tired of it and kill themselves. If you look at another example being people getting stuck in the minimum wage grind, is that, you know, their parents, they go to work, but eventually one of them gets sick, and the kid has to drop out of high school just so they can work to feed their family and have a place to live in, because if they don't do that, the house gets foreclosed upon and they don't have anywhere to live, and they can't even finish school at that time. Like, things like this will lead people, you know, to not getting an education, and if you don't get an education, you can't get a better job, and if you're stuck working at a minimum wage job just to continue existing, then you're not going to be able to go out and get an education to get a higher paying job. So it's almost like you're stuck in this perpetual cycle. And this happens all the time with people stuck in similar situations where they can't save money because the minimum wage that they have isn't even enough to live on in the first place. And when they get done with high school, there's nothing that they can do. What are you going to do? Take out a ginormous loan and then go to university just to not get a job in the field that you want to get a job in? This happens again and again and again with people, is that, you know, they get a degree and then they find out that the degree that they got isn't going to land them a job, even though it's, you know, it's supposed to have a huge amount of experience tied to it. So, like, things like this happen all the time. You can't just invest in Bitcoin or something. Like, literally, doing stocks is just a game of luck, you know? It's literally just a glorified poker match. So people are stuck in those situations. They can't do anything about it. They're just stuck in the minimum wage grind and they can't get out of it. I don't think that's right. It leads to people killing themselves. It leads to people, you know, having stress, having a high blood pressure. It leads to them having a heart attack. And, you know, you get cases of people not being able to afford health care, and then they just kill themselves because they can't afford health care, because they don't want their family to have to pay for their medical bills. These things happen all the time. You know, if the basics aren't covered for you, there's always going to be more things that you're going to have to pay for, because complications just happen in life. But our society doesn't account for that, and people end up getting fucked over as a result. So it also says, I believe the term leech is akin to calling a slave who has escaped ungrateful. There's nothing wrong with leaving an unfair system. Again, that was one of my really big points in that video, is because when you go to work, you get a wage for the job that you're doing, but then your boss, who oftentimes either the work that they're doing doesn't have a lot of value, or they're outright not doing any work, gets paid a fuck ton of money. See, the people who are actually the life and blood of the company, the people who make the company profitable in the first place, the ones who, are making the products and using the resources in the company, don't get paid anything. A lot of the time, those guys have to piss in bottles, on an assembly line like at Amazon, just so they can keep working, because they're so afraid of just taking a bathroom break because they'll get fired. You get situations like this where people aren't being paid enough to survive, but they're just stuck in that situation, and all the while their boss, who barely does anything, gets paid a fuck ton of money. It's not right. Like, if you're in a society where you're forced to work just to survive, and you're forced to do work that you don't like doing, that you're not being paid adequately for, while your boss, the person who the only reason he makes money is because he has the resources, whereas you don't. He has, the industry, the things in the factory or the building, wherever it is that you're working. He has the raw materials required to produce an item at a cost. So, for example, your boss comes about and he says, hey, you can make chairs. And he has the raw materials needed to make the chairs. He might not have even paid for them, he just has them. And he says, I want to make a profit on these chairs, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay you a wage, and then I'm going to keep the money from it. So, it's about 100 that he gives you for making the chair. Well, that means if he wants to make a profit off of it, he's going to have to sell it for 300, 200, something like that. So he can be paid as well. But ultimately, the guy who has the raw materials to build the chair that he just gave you, and the wage that he just gave you, ultimately isn't going to account for the work that you're doing, because he didn't do any work himself, and yet he makes money. So it's like, the system itself is built to not adequately pay the workers who are doing the actual work, and they're forced to do all of this work that they don't want to do. And so it's unfair. If you die unless you work, then you might as well be dying if you work. It says, I believe time is more valuable than money. No matter how hard you work, you can't get it back. Again, we're only alive here for so long, so if you spend your entire life, working and working and working, but you're not doing anything that you enjoy, and you're not making your life the most fulfilled it can possibly be, then you're just fucked. You're just doing what everyone else wants of you instead of what you want. I believe I am morally in the right, since taxation only goes to illegal wars. Again, that taxation is just stealing other people's money to spend money on going to war and these types of things. We put $500 billion in the military budget. All of that money could be spent on giving everyone college or giving everyone health care, but we just don't do it. The United States is the largest economy in the world. Geopolitically speaking, we're in the safest area of the world, where no one would want to attack us because they would get immediately destroyed, and if they tried to attack us, it would take entire oceans to get to us in the first place. So we're very, very safe. The only reason why we do illegal wars against the will of Congress and against the United Nations is so the military-industrial complex can sell more weapons and make more money off of selling weapons, and then the people who own them, the oil industry and such, can go into these countries that we go to war with and then get their oil. Look at Libya, for instance. In Libya, you had the state-run oil company that was competing with U.S. oil companies. Now, the U.S. despite being a big proponent of free markets and capitalism and stuff, doesn't seem to like competition very much when it's another country trying to compete with you. So we came in, and even after Muammar Gaddafi got rid of his chemical weapons and his nuclear weapons and was following the deal that we gave him to do all of these things and had already done it, we came in and killed him anyway. So we could get the oil, and so we could, have that oil be in the hands of U.S. companies. Who's in Libya right now? U.S. companies. That's who's extracting the oil. It's not the Libyan government, it's U.S. companies. And so we want a monopoly on the resources of other people because it makes us a fuck ton of money. But we could still have a great economy and function as a country by slashing the military budget and then putting that money into other ways of growing the economy. For example, college. If you put that money into college, then the economy would have more skilled workers, it would have more people who would be innovating and building things, building the next iPhone, which would make a ton of money. But we're not doing that. We're not investing in our people, we're investing in the military-industrial complex and these billionaire oil monopolies, trying to make even more monopolies throughout the world. So, why would I sit here and say, ooh, I gotta pay my taxes, I'm so excited to pay my taxes, when all that money is just going to stuff that I don't support? It's my money that they're stealing from me in order to do immoral things. And so, it isn't to say that everyone who works is immoral. I'm not saying that the act of working is immoral, but the institution of work is immoral. The fact that you're forced to work or you die is immoral. And the fact that when you clock into work, you're not adequately paid for the work that you're doing. You don't have a living wage. And the fact that, because I'm very against taxes, is that if you're taxing everybody, you're just stealing their money. Why would that be okay? I would much rather live a life where I'm able to make my own decisions and have as much fun as possible to live a fulfilled, enjoyable life, instead of being forced to work for some asshole who doesn't give a fuck about me and is willing to replace me with another person immediately as soon as I'm unable to keep on working. They don't care about you as an individual. They just care about the labor time that you can put in to make more profits for themselves. And that's really the problem, is that you shouldn't sell your life away being a slave just so you can, just so you can get money. Gotta survive in other ways. Man, do you have any idea how much I miss anime VHS? I used to pop these things in on the CRT television in the living room for the longest time. Never got to finish the show. This specific show, Fujushi Yugi, I bought this, I think it was on my 16th birthday because I had money to spend at the time. I bought this show on VHS because I watched, of all things, that Anime Snob review of it. So I saw Snob's review. He didn't like the show very much. He said the show was bad. I thought, well, if Snob thinks it's bad, it has to be my type of thing. Now, I was just intrigued by the aesthetic and, the fact that it was isekai, but for girls, this whole, let's escape to another world to be surrounded by hot guys and all that type of stuff. It's an interesting dynamic, at least culturally speaking, because you're having to deal with what women would want out of an isekai and stuff, and so it's a very different dynamic because of that. I don't think I should put this one here, actually. Let's put it like that, why not? Oh. But what I've been doing here, I had to get these tapes out. I had to get these tapes out of another tote so I could empty out the tote and basically disperse the stuff that was in the tote around other parts of the room, more or less. So that way I know that... You know what? Actually, let's move this and put it around here. So this way, if they fall, there'll be something there. Okay. But, you know, if I disperse the stuff more evenly around the room, I mean, this tote right here is probably not going to move that much. This tote is just going to be sitting there on top of the vent to cover up those cords and to, like, give me extra space under the desk to, like, put consoles on. So, yeah, what I've been trying to do is I've been trying to disperse the things that are inside of, like, bigger totes into smaller totes. And, with the ultimate goal of getting rid of these ginormous eyesores that are always sitting here. These ginormous totes that are just, like, laying around. I've been trying to figure out a way to get the stuff that's actually in the boxes and put them in smaller boxes under the bed, move stuff around in the closet to try and utilize as much closet space as I have, because really that's what that's for, is that, you know, the reason you have closet space is to make sure that stuff like this doesn't get out of hand. And ever since I moved in, let's put the GameCube back. Ever since I moved in, there's always been, like, this huge clutter of boxes and stuff. So, oh, that's the PSP charger. The PSP charger is just, like, randomly tangled here. I'm not the best at, like, wiring stuff, to be honest. The wiring that I'm doing here is amateur at best. But it's how I, you know, it's how I make use of the space that I have. It's gonna kind of suck. It's gonna kind of suck having that vent covered, because it's getting to be more summery here recently, and maybe I could get, like, I don't know, some kind of special fan or something. I don't know, but I do know I'm gonna have to start worrying about that a bit more heavily pretty soon, because it's been getting hotter, and so maybe this wasn't the best way to redistribute space. I think if I ever get around to actually, like, having a TV in here, there wouldn't really be any need for this, you know, big ass tote sitting here. The reason I put the tapes in it is mostly just because it was mostly empty. The point of having this here is so, like, game consoles can sit on it and stuff from under the desk. Now, what I have to do, other than pick that up, I have to clean up all of this stuff around here, and then I have to deal with these. When I was living in Maine, we had no money. We had just fled from Virginia without the proper precautions taken. We didn't plan anything. We didn't know where we were going to go. We just left the state really fast. I left most of my clothes there. I kept my laptop and everything I had with me, but my clothes, the majority of them are gone. Some of those shirts meant a lot to me that I had for quite some time, given to me by special people. I lost my birth certificate that way. There were quite a few other important birth documents that we just lost because my mom was freaking out and, you know, throwing things and everything. Oh, we gotta get out of here. And so, you know, I was put into a situation where I had to pack up her stuff and my sister's stuff, and I left mine there. But we, you know, get in this bus and we drive all the way from Virginia to Maine at the most northeastern point of the United States. And we get off at this college, and we end up having to walk for quite a few miles until eventually we get to a hospital. And this hospital is where we called the cab, which brought us to a hotel. The hotel cost quite a bit of money. And from the hotel, we got onto another bus to go further. And from there, you know, we got onto another bus, which brought us further. And we get into more cabs, and we go to this other hotel. And we just keep going to hotels. So our money is going down more and more. And eventually, you know, while my mom is freaking out during this entire time, you know, saying, you know, I'm going to jump in the street and all this other stuff, I end up having to sit there and emotionally console her and convince her that we got to keep going. And so from there, we get onto another bus and we go to the shelter. After I did some Googling and I found out about a shelter that was close. Now, this is a very small state with a lot of old people. And so they don't really have the infrastructure required to have great shelters. But eventually we did get to one. And from there, the staff really did not like my mom or me. The people there really didn't like us. They were just kind of crazy old ladies who thought we were stealing their food behind their back. Not true, but that's what they believed. And so, there was this one time where this woman, she threw something at me while I had my headphones on my laptop. I didn't even know she was there. Like, she was screaming and all this other stuff. I couldn't hear a word she was saying. And eventually the staff told her to leave, to get out of the room, because she had thought that I pissed in the toilet without flushing it. And I guess it was just because I was the only man in that shelter, so they thought I did it. But from there, the staff gets mad with my mom because she tells them that they're just young and they need to learn about the world and that they don't have any experience. That pisses them off. So we leave, get into another cab, and we get on another bus. And eventually we get to this house that my mom had found in the newspaper. And at this house, we had to sweet talk and beg the guy who was there to let us stay without turning the electricity on and to give us a discount on the place. We told the whole sob story of how we got there. And eventually, reluctantly, he agreed. I could see the face in his eye. He looked down at the floor and he went, ah. And I could tell that was the moment where he conceded to letting us stay there. And so me and my mom, we go to this room that is basically the best ventilated in the house because the heat isn't on, and Maine is a very cold place during the fall. And so we end up staying in here with our coats on. We didn't have blankets. We had like one. And so we have to huddle up together for the sake of warmth. And there were a couple days where we didn't have electricity and we had to sleep like this. Some of them were kind of okay because we got to walk to the store. I drove the shopping cart like around the town instead of bringing it back to the store where it was supposed to belong. But like, yeah, we mostly just spent like the first few days in this place just without any heating whatsoever. So we had to stick together or else we would both be cold. And my coat that I had wasn't even that good in the first place. I had to put on multiple articles of clothing. The few that I had left when I, gotten rid of most of it when we had to leave the shelter that we were originally in Virginia so quickly. And so we had so little money because the rent that we paid at this place was insanely expensive, even with the discount. And so we didn't have money for food. The little bit of food that we got costs so much money when you have to pay that much on rent and on oil for the heater, because the oil would run out immediately because the walls were too thin. The house was built in the 1950s. It didn't have good infrastructure. And so I was trapped in this situation in which we didn't have enough food. The place was cold. I didn't have enough blankets, and my coat that I had wasn't even that good. And so I end up having to walk every single day to go try and get a job. But we didn't have a phone, so they couldn't give me a call back. And so every single day that I walked outside in the freezing cold without a proper coat, I had to go back to each establishment that I applied for a job at in order to, check and see if they had hired me yet. And I just kept doing that every day. I spent about 5 to 6 hours every day walking around town asking places if I was hired yet after I filled out an application. And oftentimes it was raining and I didn't have a hat, so I was in the freezing cold and rain without proper clothing, walking back and forth every single day to try and find a job. It wasn't the best. I didn't like it very much. And around this time, I started stealing from grocery stores. This was never anything I had to do. I've never stolen from grocery stores before. I've stolen from other people before, but I've never stolen from grocery stores. And so, in order to feed myself, what I would do was that there was a Dollar Tree in the middle of town that you could just walk to. And I took this special road where if you continue walking down, there's a bunch of houses, and then eventually you find a dead end. And at that dead end, you can walk across this private land that used to have like some kind of factory at it. I don't really know what the building was meant for. But if you walk across the private land, you get to a bank. And at that bank, if you just turn, you can find a Dollar Tree and a bunch of other buildings. And then there's a furniture store on the right side, which I didn't usually walk down there. But I started walking, to this Dollar Tree every day, just so I could sit in there. There was a laundromat right beside of it, so I would sit in the laundromat to use their internet because we didn't have internet at home. I would sometimes stay nights in the laundromat because I just wanted to use the internet there. And because there were no employees in the laundromat, I could just sit there after the doors had locked. And so, like, I could open the door from the outside, from the inside, but I couldn't open it from the outside. And so, since there were no employees and doors would just lock themselves, I could just sit in there without anybody even knowing I was there. And so I would spend many hours just using the phone after the laundromat had closed. But basically, I went to this Dollar Tree and I got hungry enough that I decided, hey, there's no system in here that will beep and tell you that you're stealing something, because where I come from, in most stores, if you steal something, there's a beeper that goes off in the store and you get caught, or there's a person standing at the door that has to check your receipt to make sure you bought everything in your cart. But at this place, I guess because they had a lot of money and there's mostly old people there, no one expects you to steal anything. And so I could just walk into the store and then steal a bunch of food without anyone looking. I would go to the aisles where the security cameras couldn't see me, and then I would walk out when an employee wasn't looking. I would stuff them in as many pockets as I could, making sure that I had on a bunch of articles of clothing that had pockets, the few that I had at least. And then I would walk out, and I would eat that food as I was walking home, or I would give some of it to my mom. And I kept doing this. I did this over and over again, and somehow the people just didn't expect me to be stealing anything, so I never got caught for it. And this was how I ate around this time, until eventually I had an online friend who paid for a bunch of McDonald's for me. And that was how I ate at that point. But through most of that time, I was going out every single day in the freezing cold to try and find a job for hours every day. And then in order to eat, to have that energy, I stole from the grocery store. So that was my poverty story. It was a pretty good time. If you go back through my channel, you can find the vlogs that I was making around that time. And you'll notice a bit of a downward spiral where I kind of sound like I'm going insane as I'm making those videos. It's all documented here. But yeah, that was I don't know, as the Republicans of America would say, poverty builds character. If you want to know what I'm complaining about, they're talking about baseball and shit now, but the fucking libtards on this television show, I think this is CBS this morning, yeah. They were just like, oh my god, Obama's such a great guy, we love Obama so much. No, kill yourself, die. Literally, Obama is just everything the Republicans did, but with more socially liberal reforms, kind of. And that was only at the tail end of his administration. Fuck you, kill yourself. Some days I just look through YouTube, and you inevitably find something that dwarfs any ability that you currently have. I was looking at this Vice News video. Is the teens running former Senator
Mike Gravel's presidential campaign. Now, this may seem fairly shocking. The idea that two teenagers, people my age, are able to accomplish something to this degree. But if you look at it, it's here. They're doing it. They're making this big change in the world. And what am I doing? I'm just sitting in here looking up videos about people who are making a big change in the world. It doesn't feel particularly good to look at what other people are doing in the world and then know that their accomplishments, their ability are just going to dwarf yours, let alone looking in the, let alone looking at the people who inhabit the medium that you're already in. I mean, there's people who've been making videos years and years ago that have vastly outdone the videos that I've made on this platform. And I've been thinking about this more and more as I go into my Discord chat and I have people in there telling me like, oh, outlaw your videos. They've helped me so much. They've helped me through so many things. And on the one hand, it makes me feel really good when I hear that, that my videos were able to have such a profound effect on people. But when I think about it, and when I think about the content that I'm making, I just want to be doing more. I want to be expressing more that I haven't been able to previously express. And, I don't know, man. I feel like there's something missing, that I have to be dedicating more of myself to this than I already am. I don't think a lot of creators, generally speaking, like the direction that YouTube is going in. If you look at just a few videos when you search up YouTube problem or something to that effect, you'll get 1 million people saying, I've been demonetized, I'm off the platform, boo-hoo, I have to get a job at McDonald's. But I think people are missing the forest for the trees when they talk about demonetization, because while it hurts a lot of people, it also hurts the ones who should be by the system. The people who have been actively benefiting the most from monetization are the people who steal others' content and then massively upload it all day. The people who will just make these factory channels of toy reviews and things like that. Do you really want the people on this platform getting monetization to be, pedophile YouTubers, toy channels that just mass upload the same videos every day, like the exact same videos? That's not an exaggeration. These people who make plane crash compilations of other people's footage and then put like 20 ads on it. You want those people to be the people who go to YouTube to make their videos, because I know I don't, because I don't want to clog up the platform with more of this nonsense. I think as we've seen a cleansing of these people, a purge, if you will, we've also seen a renaissance of people who just don't care. One of my favorite channels on YouTube right now is a YouTuber called No Thank You, and his side channel, more specifically, Uakantan? I don't really know how to say it. But he has this side channel where he'll release just like hours and hours of videos every single day. And it's fucking insane. Like, I don't think any sane human being on this planet would actually go through that much effort, would actually put in that much time. Okay. This is an angle right here. This is what we do with cameras when we don't know how to use them. This is called an angle. I'm trying to figure out the ideal place to frame a YouTube video. Sometimes people ask me, Star, do you ever get lonely living this way? Spending all of your time in your room and never really interacting with anybody. And, most of the social experiences I could want are usually fulfilled by online interaction.
And if there's like something that I want to do, like going out to eat with somebody or, you know, going out to a movie or something, really fun experiences that you can only get in physical person, I'll sit there and I'll want to do it. But um, ultimately, I'll just kind of accept it that it's like, okay, I have to wait a while to do that, have to wait a while to visit someone. It's okay. With things like that, it makes me a little bit upset, but it ultimately doesn't bother me that much because I know I'm gonna be able to do it eventually as long as I just, save money or wait for the opportune time, etc. And so it makes me bummed out that I can't do fun stuff like that with friends, but, you know, it is what it is. But lately I've just been getting really sad because, like, I want to cuddle someone. I want to hold someone and, like, be able to experience physical comfort. I never really got a lot of that in a familial or friend context. Never really got very much of that. I was always kind of weirded out by it. But it was something that I always really wanted. I always really, really wanted to cuddle with someone and to love them in a really physical way. Now, I don't particularly care that much about sex, intercourse, all these, like, I don't care about these things that, most people would attribute having a relationship to either being extremely connected to the person and talking all the time or being able to have sex with them. And both of those things, neither of them are things that I particularly want to do that much. I don't want to spend all of my time with someone. And then I also am not that interested in sexual stuff. I don't care that much. I just really want someone who I can connect with in an emotional way, who I care about, who I can also just cuddle with, someone who's comforting to be around that I can just cuddle with, hug, and feel a genuine sense of compassion and love for them. There's this kind of like base human desire that a lot of us have for that, a lot of us want that because it's, I've talked so many times about how group think is sort of encoded into us that we need a tribe because if you build yourself up around a tribe. I've talked pretty in depth in other videos how there's almost a kind of natural disposition to wanting that. But people commonly want these things, love, affirmation, physical touch and stuff. They want, they want to be able to be comforted by another person to feel like, hey, maybe living in this moment isn't so bad because I have someone else who's living with me and they care enough to provide me a physical form of comfort that I can confide in when, I don't particularly feel well. There's nothing more powerful than getting a hug from someone who you really, really love when something bad is happening. Be reminded that they care about you, and to remind them that you care about them. It feels really special, and like it's just I haven't gotten that, and like it's one of those things where I sound really depressed in the video because of the tone, my tone of voice, the fact that I have to talk so quiet due to other people living in the house and stuff and the walls being so thin. And, but I can go without it. Like, I can survive without it, but it's just something I really want. I really want to love someone. Or at the very least, to give them some kind of, to get some kind of physical comfort from them. To be able to cuddle and I don't know. I feel like I'm getting at those stages of isolation that everyone gets to at some point, where, they just kind of miss that physical human component. I never really got it. It's kind of like I'm missing something that I never had, but I know I want it. And
there's nothing I can do about it though. No, there's nothing. I can't just conjure up someone to cuddle with. It just doesn't. It doesn't just come out of thin air. Um, so I don't know. It feels extremely awkward to me. To try and ask like viewers, to try and ask viewers for like close relationships or like hugs or something. Like it's possible. Like I could gather up the money and go see someone. Just have someone to talk to. Just have someone to cuddle with. I could do that. I could feasibly, monetarily do that. But it feels so weird to me. Like, it feels kind of pathetic to sit here and say, hey, fans of this program, fans of this YouTube channel, you want to help me out a little bit. My fucking God. It just, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to say, but like, I've reached that point where I want to hold anybody. I don't care who it is. I just want physical companionship of some kind. It sounds absurdly desperate. It sounds so bad. It sounds really cringeworthy, but like I just want to love someone. Because I spend all this time in this room just making content or just kind of existing. Going outside doesn't help because there's nothing outside that interests me. I just want another person. And I don't know. Maybe this is kind of a cringeworthy thing to just ask publicly. I don't know. So my Discord is public, I guess. I don't know. My dog has been endlessly hopping around the room because my dad opened the door outside, and now he's hopping around because whenever the door opens outside, he wants to jump out. No matter how many times I've walked him, it's always that way. Someone asked me on the last live stream that I did if I sit in the dark all the time, and I do. I have the few lights that irradiate from my computer screen or from the phone or from, you know, the little bitty power strip down there. Otherwise, there's no light in here. Almost never any light in here. I always keep it dark, my eyes closed, laying down. Even without sound, I'm laying down. And this is just the way that I exist. I don't mind it. I would prefer to be able to have the ability to go see friends. I would really prefer that, to be able to, on my own terms, go see friends, go out and do stuff with them. I like people. I do. Even though I live this way, I do. It's just the types of people that I like tend to be very, very specific. And by specific, I mean people who I meet on the internet who are understanding enough of me to actually accept someone who's as weird as I am. It's pretty much the metric. That's the standard that I have in place, which in a real world context, that's really difficult to receive. But on the internet, you just have to make a YouTube channel and maybe someone posts your videos on Reddit or shares it around, and eventually you find people like that. I met my best friends that way. People sharing my videos. Because if all of you is out there directly on the internet, and that you have nothing to hide because all of the truth just exists there publicly, then the people who are going to watch you are inevitably going to be more accepting of you as an individual because you have nothing to hide. And so the negative parts that would have normally scared someone away, they would have already seen those things. So if the people who would have been scared away saw those things in video, you know, from like my hair or the way that I talk or the ideas that I have, they would decide, oh, Star is bad, I don't like Star, and then they would leave. In a real world context, all the information just isn't there, so it takes a lot longer to be understood, and you're making a lot more risks in terms of like, you know, if this person is going to be worthwhile to talk to, in the sense that
are they going to understand and be nice to me, you know? So I really don't have time for people who are just like boring and have no interest in trying to understand, you know, the weird things about me, or don't want to listen to it, you know? Because I'm a weird guy. Like, the entire fabric of my being is weird. And so more often than not, I just end up spending time in this room because I can't go see my internet friends freely. Like, I don't have the money to do it. If I had the money to do it, I would just do it immediately. Immediately I would do it. And I don't have the freedom to. I don't have the freedom to do it. And if I did, you know, which I could easily organize the money, it's just that, you know, if you don't have the money right there, then you don't have the freedom to go, you know. But I would go see all my friends right now if I could. You know, we'd hang out, go to the movies and eat and stuff and just hang around town, you know, have fun. I'd just be going out and seeing people. And it doesn't make me less of an introvert. I spend all my time alone anyway, even if I got to do those things. Because my natural tendency is to draw inwardly. You know, I don't cry over spilled milk. I don't cry over not being able to talk to people every single second. I prefer being alone. But every person, well, not everybody, but the majority of people need some level of social interaction. They like friends to some extent. My taste is specific in the sense that the people who I tend to like, pretty much all of them, tend to just be from the internet. So the internet culture is my culture. That's the culture that I understand and am able to connect over. And I spend all this time in this room, and sometimes I just sit down and I think, man, I really wish I had someone to cuddle with. I'm not particularly interested in talking to someone who I'm in a relationship with constantly. I'm not interested in talking to anyone constantly. That's not my personality. So many relationships, at least on the internet that I've had, seem to necessitate that. That if you're in one, you talk all the time. I can't do that. And, you know, and when you think about sex, like, I don't particularly care about sex that much. It's not something that I'm actively seeking. It's not something that I'm desiring, you know, in a huge way. And so more often than not, it just seems like too much of a hassle. But the desire is there. Like, the desire to love someone, to care about them, and to exchange feelings through physical comfort, through snuggling and cuddling and giving hugs and having fun, funny conversations and stuff. Like, those things are all there, all things that I want to do. And the thing is that it's so difficult to find someone who wants to be with me who also strikes that balance, you know? And I'd be willing to try pretty much anybody. Like, most people I'd be willing to try. As long as, like, you know, I would be able to go see them physically. And I'd be able to, I would be able to, you know, be able to exchange these physical, you know, these physical comforts. I can't think of the other word, affections, that's what I was going to say. It's really special. It's a very special feeling, and I never got much of it as a kid from family or friends. I was just always kind of a loner, you know? Just kind of in my own body, in my own state. I never really got that much love physically. And it's something that I like a lot, that I really, really like. I just want to lay down with someone and hold them. You know, like, I spend so much time just thinking about that. Now I lay down on the bed and I think, man, I really wish there was someone with me who I could hold. And, if this is how you folks make art, it's fucking depressing. Because a lot of my work on this channel, you know, unscripted and scripted, or just stuff I don't release in general, tends to stem from this exact feeling, that I get sad from the, you know, the detached world that I live in, away from everybody else. I get sad from not being able to go and see someone and just hold them. There's a lot of wind outside my house right now. I always like it when the wind starts going. Um, it feels nice. It feels nice to hear the wind and the rain. I would like to live somewhere where it rains all the time. I think that would be nice. But I want to make a different kind of art in a way. I want to make art that's inspired by feelings of love and that time where you first kiss someone and you first you exchange your first affectionate interaction. It comes off as desperate for me to say that, but it's not something that I'm in desperation for. Like, I'm not sitting here crying about it saying, oh, woe is me, but it's in the background. It's something that I think about. I think about it and I feel a sense of longing. I go on with my day. There's still more things to do. I am a loner after all, but I still feel it. And I think everyone does to some extent. Maybe some people don't, who are just so far beyond everyone else, who their mind is so trained at this point that, like, they just exert so much self-control that they don't have to, think about these ideas of love and physical affection. But I do. A lot of us do. Even someone as misanthropic as I am does. And I just wish I could get it. That's the thing. Like, I don't even particularly care about who the person would be as long as, like, we can mutually accept one another, which I accept most people pretty fine, as long as they accept me. Like, that's my main standard that I've always talked about on this channel when I talk about misanthropy is, someone being able to deal with this, being able to deal with a guy who talks, for hours and hours into a camera about nothing. Being able to accept a guy like that. It's really all I ever wanted. And someone who gives me personal space. So, I don't know. I've been sitting around thinking about it more and more lately. Like, I've never been particularly good at commitment or being in relationships in a committed way. I spend days and days where I just go off on my own. No one even knows where I am. I don't want to do stuff like that anymore, though. I want to be able to have my alone time, but I don't want to be someone who's, who just seems totally uncommitted the way that I have in every relationship that I've been in. I just want to hold someone. That's the thing, is that's really the core of it, is that I just want to hold someone. And, I don't know. One day it will happen. I know one day it will. It's just a matter of, like, being able to wait for it. I'm generally a pretty good guy. Like, I'm not a bad person, I'm not actively trying to ruin everyone's lives around me. I try to act with fairly, I think, good principles. I try not to hurt other people, and I can be pretty funny in conversations and stuff, so I know I will find someone like that eventually, because I'm just a nice person, I'm fun to be around for the people who appreciate who I am. But it's an acquired taste. I like it because I like myself, but there's going to be a lot of people who don't, and it's just a matter of finding someone who has that acquired taste, So if I could just find someone who accepts that, I feel like I would be totally fine. I'd probably want to go see them as quick as I possibly could, but I know eventually I'll find someone like that. It just takes time. Maybe they'll be from the internet, maybe they'll be from real life, who knows? But you've got to always have hope in your heart for stuff like that. You can't give up on yourself, or else you're not going to get the thing you wanted. But it does suck. It does suck sitting down and thinking about all of this stuff and then thinking, oh, oh, I really am experiencing this existential nightmare called being alive. What a great deal.
what a great deal I've been given by this, you know, by this all powerful deity called God, putting me on this earth. Oh, what a gift! Um, but I think it's important to, have that context in mind that it will happen eventually. If you are a good guy, and if you aren't a good guy, first of all, make yourself into one. If you don't like yourself, find out about the things that you don't like and then change them, or just learn to accept them. Um, and then eventually, if you're able to enjoy your own company, you'll be able to enjoy the company of other people, because you won't be totally relying on them for external validation. That's always the most dangerous part. Is if you rely on someone for your internal well-being, your emotional well-being, relationship's always going to fall apart. I've had this happen because I was less confident as a person back then, and those insecurities begin to show pretty quickly. And it can cause a lot of really glaring flaws, especially if the other person has the same problem or worse, which in my case, a lot of the time they did. So I think it's really important to just work on who you are first. I think at this point, like, I feel pretty fine with who I am as a person. I just want to progress more in art. I want to progress more in language, and I want to progress to another place. Like, there aren't a lot of like personality flaws that I feel like I need to hammer out besides just working harder. That's really the only thing I can think of. Pretty much everything else is fine at this point. Like, if I got into a relationship tomorrow, I wouldn't worry about potentially hurting the other person because of something wrong with me, the way that I would have felt 5 months ago, etc. A year ago, definitely a year ago, is way, way worse. But as time has gone on, it's gradually gotten easier and easier, and it's gradually felt more stable and healthy as time has gone on. Where at this point, I pretty much have like a mainly positive view of myself, Um, so I don't know. Maybe one of these days, the golden egg will hatch, or it'll fall out of the sky or something, and I'll end up having a beautiful boy or girl who wants to cuddle or something. But it doesn't seem to be happening right now. Maybe one day. Really is what I desire, is physical affection. Physical affection and being able to laugh with someone, being able to go out and have fun with them and stuff. It's all things that I really like. It's just, I can't do them all the time, I don't know what the point of this video was. It seems like the saddest part about all of this is that the moment that I've had these things, looking at these videos back in the recording machine, is that I either find that they're boring or that I don't want them. That sort of persistent desire to have these things that I've found in the past. Not consistently. It's there here and there. It's never there too strong. It's just one of those things that when I'm laying down at nighttime, I'll think, what if I cuddled someone now? Or I'll think, what if I had some kind of companionship? But it's not a feeling that comes about regularly. It's very, very rare. But when it does, the feeling isn't always powerful, but it can be biting. Make me think about it. And then I'll try to pursue those ends. I'll try to get those things. And when I realize that I've had those experiences at that point, when I get those things, I'll find that they're nowhere near the level that I had once considered them. For most of my life, I've never desired these things. But in those small moments in which other people hype them up, in which other people present them as if they are something that you do want these close relationships and that, and I try to get them, and I do get them, and I get those experiences, I realized that they were things that I never wanted in the first place. That I've just allowed myself to get caught up in the hype and the hustle of what
other people have said that you should be into. And because I hadn't had those things for all of my life, I thought they would be good. I don't feel those desires strongly. They're just desires that come up every now and again. And when they do, they feel like things I should desire. And so I end up reinforcing the desire by telling myself that I should want them. And then by the time that I actually did get them, they ended up being things that I didn't want in the first place. It's those contradictory feelings, that back and forth of trying to figure out exactly what you think, and thinking that you should want something, and then the moment that you have it, not wanting it. You know, by far one of the strangest things that's marked my career on this platform is my obsession with kind of systematizing and analyzing nostalgia. One of my biggest videos on this channel, 3 a.m., an analysis of Adult Swim as this kind of, you know, time capsule of nostalgia and how it was structured and how the entire thing was done, that it was this kind of weird nostalgia for that very structure of television block, and how everything about it, the shows that were aired, the way it was done, sort of played into that feeling. That video, somehow, you know, it got a bunch of views, and I sort of became known as the guy who made this one really weird Adult Swim video. Now, I have other videos that I've written talking in depth about nostalgia. I have an endless amount of vlogs talking about visual representations of ideas, and sort of how those things can be tied into these previous experiences of stuff. So I'm a really weird guy because of that, you know, because of the... See, one thing that I hate about this room is the fact that this light right here that you're seeing in front of you, I need to cut my nails. I'm too lazy to do it. But that light up there, used to have a, what's it called? There's a word for it. There's a word that they use in layman's terms. It's like a hood. There's something that you put over the light to make the light less bright. It just doesn't have that anymore. And I don't know why it just fell down. I recorded a video at the time and I said it fell down. It quite literally did. It fell down. I should turn the light off. Hello, Bert. It's too bright in here. The thing fell down, and it almost hit my dog. I was so happy that my dog didn't get hit by the shaft or whatever the hell it is falling down onto the floor. And one of the reasons it did was because the screws weren't quite put into place super well. But even then, like, the door, whenever you open the door, because this house was made in the 1950s, whenever you open the door, the entire room shakes a little bit, because the door has been opened and closed so many times. And so, as a result of it shaking, the fucking glass hood that went on the lights just fell down. And it was really annoying. It was pretty scary for me because I didn't want my dog to get hurt. Like, it's very rare that I'm afraid of anything. I've talked about this on the channel a few times, is that I used to be a pretty paranoid guy about certain things, but it's been a long time since I've been significantly scared of anything. It's very, very difficult for me to feel afraid, but I think one of the only things that I am genuinely scared of is my dog getting hurt. Like, that's like one of the few things in the entire world that actually scares me. And, you know, when I thought about that, you know, right after it happened, and I saw that he was okay, it was like a sigh of relief went over me, you know? But the fact is is that the light is too bright without it, and I don't want to replace the shade because I know it's just going to fall down again. So there's really not much that I can do. I just have to deal with the fact that the light is way too fucking bright. And I can't put a lamp in here because I don't like lamps. I think lamps are really annoying. And I just don't think I like lights. I don't like the sunlight, I don't like normal lights, I don't like hood lights, I don't like fluorescent lights, I don't like the way they look, I don't like the way they sound, the way they see, the way they feel, I don't like how hot they are, how cold they are. They need to go. They should not be here. I do not like the light. I like being in the dark. The one single light that I enjoy is the light on this keyboard right here as it lights up, and that mouse, that internet thing, and then when I turn the monitor on, the monitor. These are the only forms of light that I will accept in my life. I don't like the sunlight. In fact, I like the sunlight so little that there is a curtain here, right? But there is also this fucking blanket that I put over the window because the sunlight was getting into the room so much that as I was laying on the bed, it actually annoyed me so much that I had to put an extra layer over the curtain. Now, granted, the curtain that's here is pretty bad. It's not the best curtain that you could possibly get. But the fact that I had to do that in the first place, that I strategically chose to put this wardrobe right here in front of it, and eventually I plan to put a bookshelf here. What my goal is that I want to get two fridges, right? And in this little plot of space beside the wardrobe, what I want to do is I want to lay two fridges down so I can have two fridges to put stuff in. And then I want to use plywood to build a bookshelf, and then just have the bookshelf cover the entire rest of the window. And then just put all of the books there. But it would be sitting on top of the two fridges. That's really my goal. Of course, that would take a lot of time and money and stuff, and I ain't got neither of those things. Well, I got one of them, but depending on how you define it. So, like, I've just been sitting here thinking about, like, I really am the weirdest guy. Like, low-key. Oh, look at this. Look at this. I got a notification. There's a new Digibro video coming out. His new videos have been pretty bad, to be honest. I really haven't been liking the new stuff he's been putting out. But, like, who else is sitting around here complaining about the degree to which a light is coming into their room? Oh no, look at this, man. A tiny bit has escaped my gaze. Time to kill self. You know, like, no one's thinking that way. It's just me. I am literally the only one who's sitting here and thinking about how do I keep as much light out of my room as possible. Because it does genuinely make me unhappy. It genuinely hurts my eyes. I genuinely do not like seeing it on a regular basis. You know, as a famous and well-spoken rapper might have said, I don't like seeing it on the regular. You know, I don't like it, and it's really weird to me that I feel this way, because it doesn't feel right. I don't think I'm supposed to feel this way, man. I don't know. It's a very weird way to feel. You shouldn't do this, man. You should just sit in your room all the time. Right? Sit in your fucking room. You wonder why you're depressed? It's because you're sitting in your fucking room all the time. Well, I got news for you. I don't get as depressed as I used to.
I used to get very, very depressed. Um, as people don't believe me when I say this. They're like, "Oh, I know something's wrong, man. You're just faking it, man. You're trying to hide things from me." Had many people tell me this. I don't actually get that depressed anymore, like at all. It happens every now and again. I'll get very bored and I'm like, ooh, self-criticism, edgy self-criticism, time to self-criticize and stuff. I mean, that's like the extent of it. Most of the time, I do not care. It's been difficult for me to feel much of anything. Like, there's a sort of depressed numbness that you have where, you get depressed and then you're like, oh, I'm sad and I also can't enjoy anything and I also can't cry or whatever and my entire emotional being is numb. But I don't feel that. I feel happy a little bit every now and again. It's like the baseline is a 6 out of 10 experience. It's not sad. But I get very bored. But like the boredom isn't sadness, it's just boredom. Like and people will come to me and they say, "How do you spend all your time in your room and you won't be sad?" Well, I just have entertaining things to do. Well, what do you do all day? You do taxes and stuff. Why are you not sad? I would be sad if I did that. I don't do taxes. I play video games. Like I don't understand why it seems like such a hard concept to grasp to people. I guess part of it is just because I was so sad for so long that it seems like an unreasonable thing for me to just feel differently. But I just do. Like, I think for me, a lot of it was incredibly circumstantial because all of the times that I was in that super, super depressed state, there were always horrible life circumstances going on around me. Like, I was depressed at an extremely young age because there were just always bad things happening. And there aren't as many bad things happening anymore, and if they do, I don't care very much.